Allstate wants to remind fans that mayhem is everywhere. Like when your fantasy league meets up at your house. Everything's great until the hot plate gets too hot for the tablecloth. Now your kitchen's up in smoke. And if you don't have the right home insurance coverage, the cost to fix this is anything but a fantasy. So switch to Allstate, save money, and get protected from mayhem like this. Not available in every state based on coverage selected, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Savings vary.
Whoa, that ball is out of here!
And coming right for us! I caught it. And I earned 3% back when I bought this glove online with my Bank of America customized cash rewards card.
Be your own hero. Earn 3% back in the category of your choice, including online shopping with the Bank of America customized cash rewards card. Learn more at bankofamerica.com/customized cash. What would you like the power to do?
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borgognoni and Matthew Betts.
Welcome in. We're back. It's the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borgognoni, and I am joined by a special guest, Andy Holloway.
I'm happy to be here, Kyle. It's been a while.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
And my cadence was thrown off because every episode, I try to do the same thing. I try to come up with a nickname for bets every single
you don't
time.
get to do that. How about, like, not at work guy?
Guy that decided he wanted to go to the beach. You would never take a week off, ever. You would never.
No, not when I'm needed, Kyle. And today I was, you said you put out the call, the bat signal went up, and I responded because I care about this city.
You care about the people. And on this episode, I'm interested of Andy's perspective. Okay, so we're going to be talking best ball ADP movement. But Andy's going to have his projections that are in the Ultimate Draft Kit available to kind of talk through some of these players. It's easy to be in a draft, to take a player based on sentiment or this is what my team needs, and forget we actually are looking at real projections of what they're doing in each game. So we've been building that out all summer. You do some tweaks all the time. I saw some Jayden Daniels tweaks, who we'll talk about on this episode.
Yep.
Did your opinion change or just like, hey, I got at this offense?
Slightly more, optimism around what they might be able to do. I think that one of the biggest challenges for fantasy players every offseason is not just hitting like repeat on certain offenses and teams because you're fatigued and tired and hated watching them play football. And Washington was one of those teams last year, Carolina, New England. Every year there's a handful of teams where they become the punchline. Right, by the second half of the season, it's ineptitude is part and parcel with thinking about them. So, just understanding that the floor for Jayden Daniels, if healthy, which look, you can make whatever jokes you want about whether he has the physical capability to stay healthy at the NFL level.
He's going to stay alive.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, whether the very popsicle stick built man will survive, but you'd presume health. And if he's healthy and he starts for the Washington Commanders, there's going to be a rushing baseline that is going to vault him above maybe even where his NFL success will be. The team might be well below 500, but the dynamic nature of what he does, I think, and the weapons that he has, McLaurin's capable, Eckler out of the backfield. Brian Robinson showed a lot last year. If this team is losing ball games, he's going to have to do a lot. So keeping an open mind to that, I think, allowed me to move. I think what my adjustment was just getting his rushing yards a tick above 700 on the season. I had him in the 600 range and just found that to be a little bit unrealistic for 17 weeks.
We try to take a team-by-team approach when we look at the rankings and in our best ball primer of just like, how does this team work? And then you look at the ADPs, and so it's very rare to find a rushing quarterback at that point in the draft. Quarterback 10, 11 is where he's going in best ball. that can elevate all the other players. You know, it's tough to click Terry McLaurin when you think about what they did last year. It's tough to click Jahan Dotson, but in a best ball format, it's like you can easily stack those two together with Jayden Daniels and kind of go along for the ride. And then I've kind of come around to Cliff. It's easy for me to make the jokes, but looking what he did with Kyler early on, I kind of forget. And I know you were in the thick of it there in Arizona, but it's like Cliff and Kyler was a good combination for a couple years.
I think what made Arizona fans frustrated was certain player utilization, but that didn't mean that the offense wasn't in the top half. Kyler had very successful fantasy seasons. You know, Jayden Daniels is a very good passer. Like, this offseason feels like it's been defined in part by everybody being on board with Anthony Richardson. You know, to some people to the degree of a top 3, top 4 player. And here's Jayden Daniels, who isn't coming off of multiple injuries, who isn't still sore and throwing with the opposite hand.
He's a better passer.
He's a much better passer. I mean, just like Kyler is a much better passer than a lot of the rushing quarterbacks before him. So, you know, we need to keep that in mind and not just let the Washington funk from last year kind of permeate and overwhelm our senses, in my opinion. So, definitely a lot of opportunity there. And Jayden Daniels, I mean, I have him at 12 in 6-point quarterback leagues. And I think that's the highest of the group. That's not where Anthony Richardson's being statted out. So, you know, Richardson came into the league with very little experience at throwing the football and doing it well.
I just sent this to you because this stat the other day blew my mind. I got to give a shout out to, on Twitter, McNamara Dynasty. Since he graduated high school, Anthony Richardson has only thrown 477 passes. Like that's like a year. That's like 1 year. It's funny to think about that, and obviously that's just part of it. The rushing upside's there, but you can get all of those projections you want in the Ultimate Draft Kit or Best Ball Rankings, Best Ball Primer. We're updating that thing all the time, and Betts and I are even putting out some season-long player props if you want to be a part of that. But I had a quick question that is specific to you, my friend, and I think it's specific to this show because our experience with DFS, Betts and I have been, I think this is year 5, maybe 6, 5 of us doing this podcast. Hey,
didn't you celebrate a 5-year anniversary at some point with this show?
I did.
I thought you posted that. Yeah.
I think it's maybe 5. It's my 9th year with Ballers, and it's your 10th year. So we've been around the block.
Goodness,
but DFS is a little new to Arizona in relative to the podcast. It was 2021, I believe, 2020, somewhere around there, where it started becoming more and more normal and
regulation
in betting.
Yeah. Regulation started to sweep the country and become legalized, and we couldn't participate before. So that was a big part of us getting interested.
Yeah, and so Betts and I got to lead that for a while, and then all of a sudden, Andy gets to just put his toes in, and way back in 2021, just to reminisce here, you, my friend, won the Millie Maker on a Thursday night game, which is just a wild thing. And I went back that night and searched, what happened, because I think what you're really good at, and I think this is really a good tease for the season, is that showdown strategy is just kind of how your brain works. It's kind of your thing when it comes to DFS, and Betts writes a weekly article on just the Thursday night game. But that night went from you and Jason thought things were going to go a certain way with Christian McCaffrey, and then thought things were completely over because he was injured and done, to my friend, you won the Millie Maker with thanks to Sam Darnold.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Darnold, I think he had a couple rushing touchdowns that night. I had Chuba Hubbard stuffed in the lineup, so the CMC injury meant that Hubbard came in and produced. I remembered, I feel like the best call of the night was actually Anthony Miller, who had recently arrived in Houston, and they utilized him. He scored a touchdown in that game. I don't remember, like, you linked the video of when I comically announced it on the main podcast and put on my golden $1 million bill hat that we had laying around the office to prove that I hadn't changed at all after winning it.
Same guy.
But what was funny about that night, and I don't remember if I shared it on the main podcast or on the Footcast or anything, was the fact that I didn't get to follow the game live.
You were with a friend
for the fourth quarter. So I had been following it along. I was nowhere near the top in the first half. I was happy about I remember the Anthony Miller touchdown happened in the first half, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. That was a dart throw. He's like a $200 player or something, and I got it. And then I had a coffee date with a friend where we were supposed a long time, hadn't seen him in forever. Just a catch up with an old friend. It was the one night we could do it. And look, nobody goes into their showdown. Despite what they say, thinking they're about to walk away with a victory. So you might put your lineups in. A lot of people play, 10, 20 lineups, whatever. I had 2 lineups in. So I definitely wasn't going to follow it super closely other than the fact I watch every football game. So I'm sitting there and I'm having this, chatting with an old friend from high school. We're catching up on life and kids and family, and then I'm starting to get blown up on my phone. And people are like, Jason knew what my lineup was, and he's like, hey, this just happened. Then this just happened. And then I remember it to this moment. I'm sitting there sipping on a coffee, and I pull my phone up, and it says first. It says I'm in first place in the fourth. And then at this point, I'm a bad friend from that point on because I'm trying to have this conversation, but I can't help but check my phone every few minutes to see what happened. And then it was the game just ended. It was absolutely, I know it'll be a once in a lifetime because that's just such an impossible thing. But I think I tied with 12 people or something like that, or 20 people. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, you got to split it. And it was just a funny night because it went from terror because Christian McCaffrey went down. Yeah. And to quote Jason, I stopped watching because I stopped living. It was such a tough night to then go from that. And it was really fun. But I wanted to point out that there's something with the showdown strategy with DFS that a lot of people who feel like, hey, I can't throw, 150 darts in the Millie Maker every single week. You can have fun, and we have contests for that. But showdown is a different strategy. You're going one game at a time, and you're going the game theory. So the way that you built your lineup was a non-CMC lineup, and Jason kind of pointed out to you, hey, if you don't have CMC, might as well have Chuba Hubbard in there.
Yep.
We don't wish for injury or anything like that. But the theory part...
if this, then that.
Yeah. The theory part, I think, is what is most valuable. And we go through a lot of strategy-related stuff. We'll talk about all those all throughout the year. So is showdown still your favorite part of DFS?
It's my favorite part of DFS because I feel like I can concentrate the appropriate amount of effort on one night. I'm not a heavy DFS player, but that night is isolated, and I feel like I have the bandwidth to think about the game at the kind of critical level for DFS in isolation and have and follow it along and enjoy it. So it's an enjoyment thing. Obviously, I could spend DFS concentration on every single matchup for Sunday because you have to think differently for DFS and how you're building lineups for the Millie Maker every week. And I just don't enjoy that process and that much time invested because it's not why I play fantasy. But on Thursdays, I didn't set out when the regulation happened. I thought, would I like props? Would I like the Sunday? Would I like the showdowns? Showdowns was at the bottom of the list. But I do enjoy them the most because it adds a little something to the weekend, and I'm watching one game that I can think about critically.
Yeah, and I think for our company, we get to compare lineups and stuff like that where it's so hard on a Sunday. There's just so many things going on. So I also encourage people, for your league, we have certain prizes in one of my leagues where whoever does best on that Thursday night, you can do a free contest, you can do a dollar contest, whatever, but you can actually win prizes. So it's another way for your league to be even more invested on a Thursday night. So yeah, I'm just excited for it's right down the pipe, right? We're a month and a half away from DFS.
It's super fun. And just to throw one other thing in there, I think it's the interdependency thing for Sunday that makes me love Thursday night or isolated games too, because you can nail what's going to happen in a game for 3 or 4 or 5 games on Sunday. But if you got 1 or 2 wrong, it's over. But if you nail what happens on a Thursday or a Monday night or an isolated game, you win.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
Yeah. And, you were able to take the winnings, give a bunch back and stuff like that. But I think a lot of our winners over the time, like in our Discord, are like, oh, I'm getting how to play this game, and this is actually fun. So we try to make sure we give out an approach where you get to teach stuff. But all of our stuff in the DFS Pass. Today, we're going to be talking some best ball.
Best Ball Bonanza.
We're going to look at the biggest ADP changes in best ball over the last month or so. It's really easy to look back in February and start poking fun of like, oh man, what do we not know? The best example is Drake London, because there was a point where Drake London in February, if you were one of those degens that were playing best ball in February, you could have gotten Drake London at wide receiver 26.
Wow.
Which just sounds juicy. And I found a show where I actually got mad at you, Andy. I really like looking back.
Yeah?
I was pretty mad because you guys talked up Drake London. We had done some research of what the offense could look like. They didn't have Kirk Cousins yet. And in March, his ADP rose 3 spots within a day. So I was very, very mad about that. And now he's going as wide receiver 10. So, you're not going to get the value anymore. It's done. We're not going to talk about players like this because that's a dramatic change for Drake London to change, to change a quarterback and then draft another quarterback for some reason. Real quick, though, wide receiver 10, do you feel like he's being drafted at his ceiling?
I do. Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening, and I think that there's a tremendous amount of risk associated with drafting him at his ceiling with just the variables in the offensive philosophy change, quarterback. I think he's a super talented player. I feel like I statted him with a tremendous amount of respect to the talent we talked about, and I guess heard his ADP earlier in the offseason. I have him at wide receiver 17 right now as my ranking, but I don't think the ceiling is top 5. I don't think the ceiling is even, I think 10 is about right.
It's so tough when you are drafting in a room and you're in the middle of the second round and you're staring down Drake London as your wide receiver 1. Because, the format with best ball is so wide receiver heavy that if you do skip it for a round or two, then you feel like you have to play catch up. One of the rules that Betts and I bring up a lot is like you need at least 4 wide receivers in best ball format. Since you're starting 3 and you're probably flexing another, you need at least 4 wide receivers through the first 6 rounds or 7 rounds. And when you're banking on a player at his ceiling to do this, it's really tough. So I like Drake London. I try to make sure that I look at him without a Falcons lens, but at this point, you are drafting a player like that at his ceiling where he was going in a very different spot a couple months ago. But in general,
he can have a monstrous uptick in every important measurable stat and still end up disappointing based on that ADP, which would be really sad. I mean, I know last year you can chalk it up to whatever, but we've done that before, right? We did that with DJ Moore for 4 years. We did that with Terry McLaurin for 4 years. He was 69 for 905 and 2 last year. 6 touchdowns. You want to give him 90 catches? Cool. You want to give him 1,200 yards? Cool. That's not enough to get wide receiver 10.
Yeah. I've seen teams where they're taking Breece in the first round, then they're following up with Drake London, and you're going into round 3 saying, like, I need to still make up wide receiver. So I think London's being drafted a bit high. If you want to get Kirk Cousins later on a stack, that's fine. But in general, for ADP, it's really hard for a player to rise that much unless there's a dramatic change. Like if you're looking at Drake London over the last, 30 days, there's not really been a change. He's going where he's going. People are drafting him there. When it does change, it's usually a news blurb that recently happened, some type of coach speak, or somebody got injured. And I hate telling people this, but in the next month or two, there will be guys that change everything. And I hate that part. That's why some people say drafting more in May is great because you get values, but you're also about to hit all these other players. We always tell people draft a bunch in May and June, maybe wait a little bit if you want to, but then August, September is where we actually get the real piece of news of like, this guy's the real backup running back. Right now, there's so many running backs that people are drafting that are just dead spots. They're not even going to be on the roster. They're going to get cut.
Kyle, the more you talk about it, the more it just feels like maybe you're gambling a little bit.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Especially an outcome. With best ball, too, it's like you are drafting a team, and waiting for an outcome that's happening in December.
Yep.
And then we're trying to, get everything in a row and tell people what's going to happen. So many things that can go wrong with best ball. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll talk about the biggest risers and fallers.
Oh, hey, we're invited to the Johnson Summer Pool Party this Saturday.
Oh, Saturday? But that's when the Blinds guy's coming to give us a quote.
Oh, I already found everything we need at Blinds.com. They're totally online, so we don't have to wait around all day just to get a quote. And they're sending us free samples.
Well, Blinds.com sounds like a no-brainer.
Shop Blinds.com's 4th of July early access sale now for up to 50% off site-wide. Up to 50% off at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
So I figured I'd look at May 1st, since that's post the NFL draft, and then up to now. So about a month and a half, and I chose a random day just to do it. So in the last...
random.
Yeah, just decided to use that. But the largest rise in ADP of any player, we'll go through the some of these fun ones and then specific positions. The largest rise in ADP since May 1st makes a lot of sense. 78 spots from undrafted to RB39 is Ezekiel Elliott in best ball. Have you sorted out the Dallas backfield at all of, I think it's going to be more Zeke? I mean, Rico's in year, 5 or 6, and we're kind of saying, we think he could be the guy. He's younger, but I don't know. I feel like they could still even add another player to that backfield.
Yeah, I mean, he's Rico Dowdle, man. Like he's going, he jumps off the page as somebody that can plug a hole. Not a linchpin. So, yeah, I mean, Zeke having a team seems to be a major driver in his ADP moving forward. I don't have either of these players having meaningful fantasy seasons, but if you get the opportunity to capture the touchdown situation in Dallas from time to time when things go that way, I mean, I believe, and I don't have the number in front of me, I believe they threw the football quite a bit in the red zone. I don't know if you remember that off the top of your head.
It was just that Pollard was
couldn't get
inefficient.
In. Yeah.
And then the touchdowns did go that way. So it's right. Like when you look at their numbers inside the red zone, it was like, man, Dak was awesome, but Pollard was also so bad. It was 16 carries inside the 5, turned into 3 touchdowns. So I think there's opportunity. I think what we're saying is somebody there could be valuable for best ball purposes. You might guess the right one for a couple weeks, and then it ends up being the other. So I'm fine taking shots of where they're going. I mean, right now Zeke is 127, so really he's like your RB3 or 4, but you're also banking on a lot from a 28-year-old running back.
I think your peak, your dream is that you have the Dallas Gus Edwards situation. That's kind of how I look at that.
Yeah,
which would be awesome. I mean, if you did anything like Gus last year. Maybe Zeke's entering his Lindale White phase of his career. I don't really know, but I know that Dak and CD will drive the offense, and Zeke is it's hard to be worse than Pollard in the red zone.
So with wide receivers, I was looking at some of the bigger declines because in general, this is a wide receiver format. Everybody's drafting all these guys. This year, of the top 36 picks, 24 of them are wide receivers. So in other words, 2/3 of the first 3 rounds are wide receivers. It's just, up the board. We're seeing this in redraft and everywhere else. There was one player, though, that had the largest decline of any wide receiver, and he was a rookie, which is super rare to find a rookie wide receiver going down. It was Troy Franklin, Andy. And I don't know if you need a victory lap. I don't know if you need to tell everybody.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's kind of a big deal to go from a round 10, 11 player right after the draft to right now he's going as wide receiver 77. I think the people are sunsetting on the idea of like, you know what? Maybe I held on to my priors for too long. Because I liked Franklin before the draft. You weren't as high, but I mean, that's so late. I mean, that's a drop of almost.
I like how you
rounds.
put that. I was less high, like because you and Jason were clearly very high when you had your opinion. No, that was almost the biggest like bully peer pressure situation I've ever had.
Of course, yeah.
Because I was not like we all do film study, we all watch the tape, and it's subjective, and that's how scouting works. And there aren't universal, outside of the statistics, there aren't universal things with your eyeballs that you're like, you think this player's good, you think they're not. I didn't like him that much. I thought maybe I just watched the wrong stuff. I mean, am I going to victory lap? Yeah, I'm not victory lapping on the ADP. I'm victory lapping on the draft selection that the NFL didn't think he was as good as the DraftNet community, but it doesn't mean he has no chance of producing. It just means the chances are low.
Yeah, we did this study a couple episodes ago where it was like, if you were drafted on day 3, you basically have like a 7% chance of being a top 24 wide receiver in any stage of your career. Like, it's just not happening. So I think in year 1, there's a lot. You can put whatever narrative you want with Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, but that decline makes sense to me. Like, that's the biggest thing that I want to take away from this episode is when we look at the ADPs that have changed, does it make sense with this player, with their role in the offense, and what you need for best ball? So rookies in general see a pretty big rise. Like, it's very rare for a rookie wide receiver just to fall off unless there's an injury. So we've talked a lot that the ADPs this year for rookie wide receivers are just out of control. And so I want to get your temperature on some of these guys that this is where they're at, the rookie wide receivers. And then you kind of go through your projections, Andy, and tell me, like, does that make sense? So, like, Marvin Harrison Jr., he's held pretty steady this summer as wide receiver 9, 13th off the board. He's a fringe 1-2 turn kind of guy. I feel like he goes where he's supposed to go, but it's still hard clicking a button for the highest rookie wide receiver ever drafted.
Agreed, and it always will be. It'll always be hard to click that button. I have him at 9 exactly in my projections. So I think that you have the highest probability of a rookie wide receiver to come in and break a bunch of rookie records with Marvin Harrison alongside Kyler Murray this year. No competition. Murray has had MVP stretches in his career. We've seen him with DeAndre Hopkins for long periods of time, hyper target, the best talent, and all the reports out of camp are just exemplary for Marvin Harrison, which is why he was drafted where he was drafted. So Harrison feels okay. I wonder too if, likability factor impacts people wanting these guys on their team, right? Like, it's not just probability.
I love him so much. Every day I've clicked trying to get a jersey or a shirt because my sons already like him a lot, Marvin Harrison, and I'm sure, everybody loves him there. So, yes, he's very likable. I want him to do well. I'm selfishly want him because of my dynasty rosters because you'll never touch him, Andy. You'll never, ever get him from us.
Outside of your bias, did any of my offers even approach realistic?
No.
Okay.
We're
good to know.
So smitten and so excited.
Yeah,
that,
so if I offered you like CMC and Josh Allen today for him,
we could talk.
Yeah, okay, but that's way too much.
So let's talk about some of these other rookie wide receivers. Malik Neighbors has been pretty steady. I think we've kind of come around to like, okay, the volume's going to be there, but this could be an inefficient offense. Rome Odunze is the one that has dropped in ADP. He's down 6 spots from where he was a month ago. He's at wide receiver 38. Do you think that people are souring a bit on like, okay, I was excited about this offense. I love his draft capital, but it's like, I think he's going to be the wide receiver 3 on this team. So that's a rich price to pay when he was wide receiver 32.
Yeah, and you're getting more to the place where I think it's attractive for the upside. In Chicago, you can see them having a very successful season without a lot of Odunze dependency. You can't see that for New York. They need Neighbors. You can't see that for Arizona. They can't succeed without Harrison. But people are, even today, I think Rome Odunze returning punts was brought up. They talked about Odunze, I don't know if it was the head coach or the offensive coordinator, talking about him being a 4-down player, referring to punt returns. So,
that's cool.
There you go. That's it tells you a little bit more about where he slots in. Now, I know enough from playing for, doing this job for 10 years and playing for 20 years that it's like 2 games, right? Like if a player comes out and Odunze has a 200-yard game, like it's over. Like it's done. Like he's going to have the opportunities the rest of the season. He comes out and has a monstrous week 1, 2, 3. It changes everything. But the probability has gone down because people see the path. Wide receiver 38, I mean, I don't think I have him ranked anywhere near that.
I think in best ball, so he's like, what's that, a 6th-round pick? So now
I'm like in the 40s for him.
Okay. So in terms of the format, though, and the upside, you get where he's going.
Oh, I think this is okay. I think that's why I was saying, like, 32 does seem a little bit like it's going to mess you up a lot if you take him there and it doesn't work out. Whereas 38, 40, 42, depending on your draft, I think he's worth the upside for what he could produce.
Yeah, and in this format, it's like if he's your wide receiver 4, you feel happy. You've already gotten your studs. You get to go away. Let's a couple more. Lad McConkey is up 5 spots from where he was May 1st.
That's fine. What do you think?
So I think that the Chargers offense has been one that we've talked about. It's like there's values. It's like nobody really knows where to go in. The first drafted player is McConkey, and then it's like Herbert's down the road, Johnson's down the road. Palmer's kind of gone up a bit in the last month, but really this is an offense. It's like it's rare to take a team that has a projected win total of 9.5 wins, and they don't have a player that shows up until 70th off the board. It's like, this is a good team. They're going to have wins. They're going to score points.
Yeah, these are always opportunities for value. I mean, I don't have any of the top 3 wide receivers in Los Angeles inside my top 50, but I have no question that someone on that roster will be inside the top 50. So it's just what can I stat these guys out for, and who's going to be able to get it done. I mean, they also have DJ Chark in the mix over there, and who knows? Chark could end up being the highest producer. I don't think that's an impossibility on that offense. So on the main show yesterday, I talked about the fact that when I brought up Quentin Johnston as a possible sleeper candidate, it was in the context that, like, the worst offenses in football last year, Carolina with Adam Thielen, Denver with Cortland Sutton. I know this one's wild, but New England in the first 4 weeks, I think there were 2 monster weeks from Kendrick Bourne. There are always opportunities on bad offenses, and Los Angeles is not going to be a bad offense. They might be a lower pass volume offense, but they'll be a good offense, which means touchdown opportunities. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think a lot of these wide receivers, Brian Thomas has been down a couple of spots, but I still like where he goes.
That's interesting to me, by the way, because I saw this list that you had in the show doc, and I saw the rookies, and then I just went and I was trying to figure out how Brian Thomas went up, and he didn't. Now, was this just because the reaction was really strong when he was drafted, and now we're balancing?
I think that's what it is. I think over time, the way that drafters are is that it kind of, I mean, you get a better feel for where players are going. And also, a lot of this with best ball is where's their stacking partners going. So a lot of players kind of filter to certain sides of the board. Like you see it with the Eagles now where it's like that 3-4 turn, it's going to be people saying like, I'm going to stack Devonta Smith and Hurts together, where Brian Thomas is kind of lining up where people are stacking him with Lawrence, especially after that contract extension. But there's also some movement, some other guys. In this range is also a lot of the Kansas City wide receivers, which they're all together. No one really knows what to do with Worthy. Hollywood Brown is one of my least favorite. I brought it up on this podcast. Like I don't like his ADP. And then Rashee Rice is one of those where after the news broke in May, I mean, his ADP took a free fall, and now it's actually starting to rise up again, where it's like this overcorrection of the pendulum where it's like, oh, well, yes, he could get suspended, but this is still a really good player who might be the wide receiver 1 for this team. So overcorrections can occur. I think I like where Brian Thomas is going. I just took him on a Best Ball Mania team, but with Rice, that's the one I wanted to bring up, is like his spot, he's dropped 27 spots since May, and it makes sense knowing his suspension. Do you think he's still the wide receiver 1 on that team apart from Kelsey? Like, how do you have them statted out not knowing the suspension?
Yeah, I mean, the suspension's really tough. Obviously, and it feels like the same kind of variable you're talking about when you draft in February, or when you suffer a preseason injury. Like, you're making bets. You could get lucky on the right side of that bet, but I think Rice is the number one. Yes. I think when he's healthy and back on the field, the answer is yes. Now, if the suspension is 10 games or 12 games or something to where the team can build a complete offense and rapport without him, you're going to throw some worry into the mix. If Hollywood plays well, if Xavier Worthy shows something. So the way it's tough because the way I have him statted out is, he's a wide receiver 56, but that's because I'm not giving him a majority of the season. And so when it's a even playing field, when everybody's on the field, yes, I think Rashee Rice is going to be the guy.
Yeah, it's so hard to give clear advice of this is what will happen. Betts has been pretty bullish, saying like, hey, he's dropped to the point where I am drafting him, where he was going in the 80s, and now it's at the point where it's kind of going up again in the 70s. So I think
do you look at it the same way as a player that the injury return is mysterious? And, like let's say there's another star. Like you could pick somebody out let's just say DJ Moore, right? Let's say DJ Moore, he's going to miss the first 6 weeks due to, whatever. They put him on the PUP or something. Do you view it the exact same way, or is the suspension adding an extra negative variable?
I think the suspension in best ball, because it's like I'm drafting, I'm not have to figure out anything else. It's like I want to draft as if I get first. It actually encourages me to take shots at these kind of players because there isn't some injury thing we're dealing with. Like Kamara last year, you could have said like, oh, I don't really want to buy into him. Once you knew the suspension, you were like, okay, his ADP is going to be at a spot where then I know what I'm going to get, know what I can count on weeks 4 through whatever. When he was awesome, he was like the RB2 from week 4 to 15. So in best ball season, I'm fine with this if it's not. Now, morally speaking, there's all the other things that you're dealing with actual suspensions, but Rashee Rice seems like a player that if you're getting as your wide receiver 4 on a really good offense where Patrick Mahomes is kind of ping-ponged on his TD rate, this seems like a year where things can blow up, and I want a part of that. Rice was awesome down the stretch. I mean, he was way better than Kelsey. He became their number one guy, and then the playoffs, Kelsey became a little bit more important. But yeah, it's just funny the way that drafters are. It's like, oh, we don't want this guy. He's getting suspended. And then there becomes a certain point. It's like, maybe I do want this player.
Because we all want an edge. I mean, we all want to be the ones that win the lottery. It's funny in fantasy. You can draft all the right players at the right time, but the thing you're the most happy about is the moment that, like, I signed Kurt Warner in the preseason right after he played well, or like I added Marshawn Lynch to my roster before he signed with the Raiders. Like, if you have a chance of winning that lottery, that feels the best.
Yes. No, Betts and I always joke with each other. It's like, hey, did I win? I don't know, but I got closing line value. And so I feel really, really smart. And I want to tell people about it that, Jeremy's telling us right now, we picked up Puka off waivers. Like, that's...
I remember.
And we'll tell you every single time. I mean, who hasn't been Dynasty is the line we use in our company.
Yeah, because it makes you feel like a sharp.
Who has Tank Dell in Dynasty? I can't remember that either.
You probably.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, you probably do.
Yeah, no, we're feeling good about where we're at in our Dynasty team. All right, so let's talk about some more ADP changes. Quarterback is one of those positions that the market's fairly efficient. Like, there'll be some changes in spots. You've seen Jayden Daniels rise a bunch because people are like, oh, well, he runs. Why am I not drafting him more?
Yeah.
But in general, most quarterbacks stay where they are. There's some later guys that have moved up. I think Will Levis is one of those guys that over time are like, well, I don't know if this could work, but in best ball, who cares? If it works.
Oh, yeah.
And you talked about Calvin Ridley a lot recently as like, okay, well, I mean, Calvin Ridley and Will Levis are a perfect late combo to take in stacking because you're getting the boom weeks and you can live without the other ones.
I'm kind of really excited to see what happens in Tennessee.
Andy, I know you because what you're saying is Calvin Ridley is shaping up to be a potential my guy.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely on the board right now as a leader in the clubhouse. The ADP could jack it up for me, but I don't think it will. Like I said this on the show the other day, if I did a full dedicated Calvin Ridley episode, 3 times in a row, I don't think it moves him. Like, I think the view on him is ironically much more like people view Hopkins, like players beyond the peak who are still pretty good, but not bankable. But I think Will Levis is the great, wonderful variable. Like, what if Will Levis is Jordan Love? Like, what if Will Levis has, Jordan Love mixed with Jameis Winston? What if he comes out and they let him throw it around and he's much, much better than people expect, and maybe they don't win a lot of games, but I think that's what makes it very exciting and interesting. It's not like you're going into the season with this game manager nothing of a quarterback. You could completely lose the ball game, the bet rather, but he's capable of driving the ball down the field.
Yeah, Will Levis is quarterback 24. Betts and I talked to him as like, if you need a backdoor stack, like you're not counting on Will Levis obviously as your quarterback 1, but quarterback 2, quarterback 3 in your best ball builds. That sounds great. Calvin Ridley is going as wide receiver 35 in best ball, so a little bit ahead of where he is in redraft, but I'm going to give you some names. You tell me in best ball, so shooting for the moon here, who would you rather have? These are guys going ahead of Calvin Ridley. Terry McLaurin.
Oh, give me Ridley.
Hollywood Brown.
Ridley.
Okay, watch your mouth here. Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I'm taking Ridley.
I think I'd take Ridley too.
I mean, give me somebody that I can not choose Ridley though.
Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the one. I think
he's going ahead, and Pickens is going ahead. So those are players that we have ranked very similarly. One more, Jayden Reed.
I think I would go Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, I'm looking at our rankings right now. It's like one of those players that I want to make sure people have them on their rosters, that they're not scared off by the stink of last year. Because I think that's what it is. Like, was Calvin really good? It's the expectation, right? Like, Calvin Ridley's supposed to be a wide receiver 1, and you were reading it off. Like, he finished pretty much where he was drafted last year, except the ride was
it was
terrible.
Not fun. No, it wasn't. But yeah. Neither is, I mean, watching Trevor Lawrence throw the football is a different ride as well, because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Jewelry can say many things on your wedding day. As a wedding band, it can say, "This is a forever symbol of our forever love." As a gift to your wedding party, it can say, "Thanks for standing up there with us." Blue Nile can help you find the piece that says it all and says it beautifully, with expert guidance and a wide assortment of jewelry of the highest quality at the best price. Go to BlueNile.com and experience the convenience of shopping Blue Nile, the original online jeweler since 1999. That's BlueNile.com.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
All right, we're back. We're going to keep talking some ADP changes. And the one quarterback that's fallen the most over the last month and a half is CJ Stroud. And we've brought him up. Mike brought him up on the Bus episode of the main show. He's down 16 spots since the beginning of May. It's kind of been a slow, steady decrease. He's QB6 right now. So in best ball, you think about his wide receivers that go ahead of him. Nico, you're getting Diggs, you're getting Dell, and then people are stacking with CJ Stroud right after. So I'm actually okay, and it makes sense. I'm glad that he dropped because I think that's what it's supposed to. Now, I haven't been drafting him at all in best ball over the last 2 months, so I feel good about that. But are you okay in this format where you're just living on the highs and lows? If you had CJ Stroud as your quarterback 1, you stacked him with 2 Texans, but then I still feel like you need another strong quarterback with CJ Stroud. And so like Jayden Daniels is my favorite guy to like kind of pair with him. So are you fine with where he's going now, which is in the 6th round?
I think the Stroud conversation is super interesting. I think I'm okay with that. I brought up on the main show yesterday that I was just looking at the top finishers at the position. And the majority of the young quarterbacks that have had success, Hurts, Allen, Lamar, Lawrence, Burrow, Herbert, and about 5 others. Like the majority that finish near the top of the rankings right now, their fantasy finish improved from year 2 compared to year 1. there was like one player, Dak, who was, he had that kind of outlandish rookie season, and then he dropped from 6 to 10, which is not wild. It's just the pocket passer discussion that scares people off, and it's drafting him at a ceiling because he's not a rushing quarterback that scares people off. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm okay there, and I don't want to swing the pendulum so far,
right?
Where, like, what are the odds that CJ Stroud takes over the league this year? There's the possibility that he's in MVP discussions.
For sure. I think one of the things that I care about the most when we're talking about fantasy football projections analysis is you can have a nuanced approach about a player in so many different formats. In Dynasty, I would kill to have CJ Stroud. Like, I would love it, in a super flex league, or, it's like we're going to be playing CJ Stroud in DFS, but this is about an opportunity cost thing. And so I think the market's gotten to the point now where it makes more sense in best ball. And I wonder in redraft if he's just going to hang out in the 4th round, because we've said before, like, I'm not taking a quarterback there in a 1 quarterback league at all. It's just not going to happen. The spike weeks is what kind of scares me a little bit. Last year, my memories of CJ Stroud was that Tampa Bay game where he threw 5 touchdowns and it was just bananas. And then I went back and I was like, wait, that was his only game with 3 passing touchdowns all last year? I mean, he rushed a couple times. He had 3 rushing touchdowns. But in best ball, I want spike weeks. And the fact that it only had 2 top 5 games does scare me off when I think about the rushing floors not there. So I think that's why I've had him ranked. I have Kyler in best ball ranked ahead of CJ Stroud just because I like the stacking options and he's just going to run the ball more. But they're right around the same spot. You just don't have to pay the same thing with CJ Stroud. So that's my issue. The spike weeks actually weren't there last year at all. But maybe he levels up. I don't know.
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to look at the rookie season for a quarterback that shows a lot of talent. They had a handful of bad matchups. It's just hard for me to make that prescriptive. Like, that's just a mental challenge that I have. It's like, I don't like looking at the trends of a rookie season for a rookie quarterback because the accelerated learning curve, the weapons, all of those factors, it's just like, it's all we have to go on. And so it's going to be the backbone of an argument. But I dismiss it quite a bit when I see a player with tremendous talent. And I just believe that, what do we see in fantasy? We see special MVP-like seasons. We see Kyler with a quarterback 2. We see Lamar go and win the MVP from after years of being lower ranked. So it's just a matter of whether you believe Stroud's reign begins now, whether you believe it'll ever begin. I don't think we as fantasy players really enjoy the fact we only get, 1 season of data.
For sure. I mean, Mahomes, year 2, MVP. Lamar, year 2, MVP. So he definitely has that in his range of outcomes. The one thing they didn't
Burrow
do,
was on pace for it too, right? I mean,
yeah. The one thing he didn't do is they didn't give him a lot of play action stuff because I found this stat out. He had the most turnover-worthy plays in the league on play action. So they just like over time, like, we're not going to put your back to the defense. We're just going to let you do what you're really good at. It's like my comp for him is he's a point guard. He's like a 6'3", 6'4" point guard out on the field. So if it's Noah Brown, whoever it is out there, like he can find them and make them into awesome players. So we like CJ Stroud. It's just,
yeah, I mean, you might like somebody
in a better spot.
It's probably likely that a lot of people like lower options draft wise a lot more. I mean, that's the most likely outcome for most people.
All right, I want to go through some positions that have some dirtier names. I mean, names that I think at the end of the day, they're nasty. Because in best ball, people are trying. I mean, these are degenerate people, Andy. These are people that are drafting.
I've heard. I try to stay away, but yeah, I've heard.
They're foaming at the mouth just to draft. I don't know, backup running backs to hope.
That's where Betts is, right? He's in a hospital somewhere. This is not a vacation.
Yeah, that's what he put in the company calendar.
Yeah,
but
his recovery.
He's just sitting by the beach, best balling.
Yeah,
and calling it work. That's what he's probably going to say. Hey, guys, I was working while I was off. So there's some cheaper running backs that have risen a lot. And one of the points we bring up a lot with best ball is at this point in the offseason, we're guessing on the RB2 and RB3 of a lot of rosters. It's like, I think it's this guy. I wanted to be this guy. And then you look up later, you're like, they cut him. They didn't want him at all. So I was reading some stuff from Nick Underhill the other day, the Saints beat writer. It's like, he really likes Jamal Williams and thinks that he's going to be. I was like, Jamal Williams wasn't even on my radar. But I think he has a contract.
Yep.
He's going to get some stuff, and I haven't been drafting him at all. So there's things we're going to get wrong at this point. The biggest riser over the last month and a half for running backs is Braylon Allen of the Jets. And I think part of that is due to this Breece Hall. He's coming along slowly. We'll figure out what it is. But he's up 31 spots right now where people are drafting him in round 16, 17. Do you have any read on that backfield? Like, is he the one that you're like, okay, well, I mean, I'm going to take a stab, and I'm not hoping for Breece to get injured, but at least he's big.
Yeah. I mean, this was a player that I think some people projected early in the draft season to be a high selection with an opportunity early in his career to carry the load. So it's nice when you check that box of being a 3-down type of backup, as opposed to, the team's going to shift to this amalgamation of an ensemble of different characters. So it makes sense with Braylon Allen. The reports have been pretty positive. He's capable in the passing game, I think, if something happened to Breece. So it makes some sense that people would take that shot.
Yeah. Another one is Elijah Mitchell, because we got some news recently that Isaac Guerendo is going to be maybe doing more special teams. That's another player that if you were drafting early and you said, hey, they drafted this guy, he was good at the combine, and you were taking him, you might have a dead spot on your roster. And San Francisco is the worst one to guess because we've been through this, right? Ty Davis-Price, Jordan Mason, Trey Sermon, all these guys that like we thought were the backup dudes or the dudes, it doesn't matter. But I think Elijah Mitchell is shaping up to be a really good best ball pick because he's the dude if CMC's out.
I agree, and I don't really have any different narrative there. I think it's 100% Elijah Mitchell. I think the blind shots on the other names. I mean, look, Elijah Mitchell gets hurt all the time. That's your bet on somebody else. But if Elijah Mitchell's happy, he's going to be the guy.
Yeah. All right, some fallers I just want to quickly mention at running back, and then we'll hit some wide receivers before we're done. Nick Chubb right now, he's been in a free fall since May, and it makes sense. The news has been not overly negative, just neutral.
No
just
direction.
Like, hey, yeah, and I think when that happens in best ball, people go, well, I can't be bullish on this player. I'll let somebody else guess and take him. So he's at the point now where he's RB 43, and I get the upside. I love Nick Chubb, loved him since his days at Georgia, but I mean, we haven't been clicking the button, and Betts is one of those guys. I just trust whatever Betts says for the most part of like, hey, the recovery is going to be longer than what you think. So could he be a player at the end of the year that balls out and we were like, oh man, I wish we'd had him? I think in redraft, you're just going to let somebody else take him and they're going to put him on IR and they're just going to wait. But in best ball, I'm pretty much hands off.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, right now we don't have any direction from the team, no timeline. Like you said, the news hasn't been like overtly negative, but it's stuff like, hey, he's running on the track down at the gym, and is he full speed? Is he not? Does he? Did you burn a pick? Did he set it on fire? Possible.
It's so hard because he's one of those guys that is a superhuman. If you've ever seen him like in shorts, he looks like a superhuman, and then you put pads on. So
his injury was one of the saddest ones that I can remember in recent years.
I won't say that I traded for him in Dynasty a week before, but I did.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I was like, I just need a running back.
Sounds like you need a week off by the beach.
I do need that. Josh Jacobs has dropped over a round in the last month. Do you have any read? I know Jason's been talking up Marshawn Lloyd.
I would assume that's the reason why, right? Lloyd?
That's it. It's the news blurbs from Lloyd is causing Jacobs to kind of go down in people's minds from where he used to go, which is about top 40. So I still like Josh Jacobs. I still think he could be fine, but in best ball, you're hoping for a home run, and there's an outcome where Josh Jacobs is just meh, and you took a running back in the 4th, 5th round. It's like, hey, this guy didn't really help me. RB15, if he finishes RB15, that's fine in redraft, but in best ball, that would kill your roster because you're missing up a ton of upside. So,
yeah,
are you fine at RB12?
Fine is the best way to put it. I'm a little uncomfortable. I did compare the situation to ETN and Bigsby, and it happened to be like on the number. Like pick 88 was Bigsby, pick 88 was Marshawn Lloyd, incumbent Jacobs and ETN, and it went wrong for those that bet against ETN last year. A rookie has a lot to prove, and I'll repeat this a million times. It's not just, is he a good player? It's that, is he well-rounded enough to earn any semblance of trust from the coaching staff? It takes 2 fumbles. It takes a misread on a pass protection. It takes, a dropped pass. And you could be kind of ostracized for 6-7 weeks at a time before you get another shot. Like, these guys don't mess around. A lot of these coaches, they just don't mess around. Why do it? They brought back A.J. Dillon. Like, A.J. Dillon, we don't like to watch him play football. But that doesn't matter, because if their head coach, if Matt LaFleur wants to, go put him out there because he trusts him in pass protection, that's what he's going to do. It's not going to matter how fast Marshawn Lloyd is.
Yeah. I think Lloyd has been a player we've talked about a ton as, if you're going 0 RB, we want him on rosters, but it's easy to swing the pendulum too far. I think at the end of the day, like, that's what I did last year with Bigsby, to be honest. I was like, I liked Bigsby. Jason liked Bigsby. Maybe there's going to be more opportunity here, and I think I just whiffed on ETN. ETN was what, RB3? I mean, he was really, really good for a long time.
And the first half of the year, he was winning you a lot of weeks.
All right, let's follow up and just finish with some wide receivers, and I'm going to bring up some guys that are not pretty by any means. But in best ball, people are just trying to stockpile, right? They're just like, I need 8 wide receivers, and so guys like Joshua Palmer, the least sexy name you could get, but is he going to be, like, we talked earlier about McConkey, we talked about Quentin Johnston. Is Palmer going to be an every down player?
Yes.
That sounds so sad, because I don't think he's like a great NFL player, but I also think he kind of fits what this, like, he's DeMarcus Robinson.
Perfect.
He's somebody that's going to get on the field. He's going to have a couple of spike weeks, and he's going at 107 overall. So it makes sense, but is there a chance that he outscores McConkey?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think all 4 wide receivers in Los Angeles could finish as the top fantasy producer. That's the problem. Chark, Quentin, McConkey, Palmer. All 4 of them are in not even odds, but they all have the potential to actually be the highest fantasy score, and that's why they're being drafted where they're drafted.
And that, to me, that's a buying opportunity, and it's also landmines. Because I want to guess. I want to guess right. I want to be the smart person in the room that gets Quentin Johnston ahead of everybody else who slept on him, but I also know there's risk.
If I had to put it in, maybe it helps to put it in snap order, total snaps, I think it goes Palmer, Johnston, McConkey, Chark.
Yeah.
I mean, how would you put that in snaps?
I have no idea how to adjust McConkey in my mind from watching him at Georgia and saying, like, oh, this is how he was effective on a per route, and this is how he will be used in this offense. I mean, it was a high pick. They also gave him, I don't know if you saw the blurb, it was like some of the most money ever for his draft slot.
Yeah, I did. He took a while to sign.
Yeah.
Got to get that money.
Hold on.
Hold on.
I don't have the button for that.
You don't have. See, does that pipe through? I don't know if it does. If not, there are cricket sounds.
Have you ever done that to yourself on a show?
Just today. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we won't tell anyone else. A couple more names here. We talked about Troy Franklin. Mike Williams has dropped almost a full round, and I personally, we were writing this in our blurbs in the Best Ball Primer, I'm just terrified of the Jets in general. Like, I hate investing in a team where there's more variables than people think, and I think they're really thin. Like, I think it's a really thin roster on offense that's hanging on a 41-year-old's arm. So,
like, did you ever go to the beach as a kid? And sometimes in California there would be these sandcastle builders, like these guys that would come along and maybe they do it for tips, but they'd build these beautiful sandcastles.
Pacific Ocean, you say?
Pacific Ocean, yeah. And
okay.
And like, they're still sandcastles, man. They look really pretty, but they're just waiting for a wave. They're waiting for the tide. Like, they're not standing forever. Like, we all know that the Jets, like, this isn't a 10-year thing. This isn't a 5-year thing. So, yeah, I mean, we're all terrified because we know that, like, you could just, the wind blows the wrong direction and all the cards come crumbling down.
Look, I want you to look at the Jets projections real quick, because Mike Williams has always been a better in best ball player, right? Like, we had an article a couple years ago where he was the cover boy. If you want volatility, Mike Williams is the guy. And right now he's going around pick 115. I have such a hard time clicking the button for him because I'm not stacking Aaron Rodgers. So I'm not really interested in getting part of that team. And I know Mike Williams at this point. He's there for a couple, and he could be injured and out because he jumps and flops on the field.
He's not even Mike playing Williams right now, right?
I need to look it up.
I'm pretty sure that's part of why his ADP is going down, is that you're getting nothing because I don't think he's playing football right now. I think he is like maybe jogging on the sideline or working to the side. I don't know if he's doing much.
Mike Williams, I feel like he's been a favorite of yours for a while, of just like, I like this player as he's fun in the NFL, but there's just so much.
Those days have come and gone for me, brother.
Oh, Big Mike?
64 for 805. That's where I've got him.
I do see him in his Jets uniform, but he's just taking pictures.
He can do that.
Yeah, I mean, Salah's talked him up a little bit of like, once he gets up to speed, once he's a part of the offense, once we get him in,
once he's healthy.
Yeah. I've been passing him by, and I think it's been really sad because in best ball has usually been a guy that we want to target.
Yep.
A couple tight ends, and there's one specifically that you opened my eyes to, and it's Noah Fant. I've been on the fence of just saying like, okay, if you get a tight end 2 later on, here's these other guys. We've named a bunch of other dudes, Cade Otton or, Isaiah Likely, a player that we like a lot, Hunter Henry, and then Noah Fant's sitting there, and he's risen about, 2 rounds in the last month. So Noah Fant's one of those players that it's easy to just kind of think like, oh, I know what he is. He wasn't that involved, but they don't have any other tight ends there right now. Like they basically said, we don't care. They drafted AJ Barner, but he was a blocking tight end. So Noah Fant, I think is setting up to be one of the sneakier names, and their offensive coordinators talked about him. We've kind of talked him up a little bit. So I don't know, like, has your perspective on him being like, I think he could be sneaky?
Yeah, I think it's all the things that you laid out is why he at least has risen in, our attention. It's hard when a player caught 32 passes last year to, he's had some years where, he caught 68 passes in 2021. He was the tight end 12 2 years in a row. And then we knew the death sentence of being traded over to Seattle. Still had an okay season in terms of, no, he didn't. I mean, Denver was where it was good. Last year, the only thing you can hang your hat on is like a 12.9 yards per catch. And the fact that he can make, he's going to make some big plays here and there. But his snap percentage was the lowest of his career last year. That's where you're hoping he's back up in the 70s. He's just that really, what if they built the offense with him as an integral piece question.
Yeah, I was looking up some quotes the other day because, like, you were talking about him in our Slack, and I was like, I haven't thought about Noah Fant at all.
Oh yeah,
in these formats.
Yeah,
and some of like their team was looking at like what he's done on a per catch basis, which like yes, the volume's been low. He's still athletic, right? He's what 25, 26.
Yep.
He's still fairly young, so I think they can use him. And this is an offense that we're kind of buying in. It's a new offense, right? It's 3 wide receivers. It's Ryan Grubb, what he brought over from Washington. So I think that could be good. One more name I want to bring up, and this is my sneaky name.
Yep.
It's Jelani Woods of the Colts, because he is one of the highest risers over the last month. He's up almost a full round, where people are now taking him at the end of their draft. Tight end for the Colts, in case you deleted that from your brain. I think it's just people wanted to stack with Richardson. At the end of the day, it's like, I need somebody late. He's athletic. Maybe Richardson takes the leap. Any thoughts on Woods? There's like 30 tight ends there anyways.
Yeah, I mean, Mallory, you've got Mo Alley Cox still there. You've got Kylan Granson. But I'm with you. No, I think Jelani Woods, if you don't know the history there, very talented, flashed, and then dealt with massive injuries. I believe he missed all of last year. Is that?
Yeah, he was hurt for, I can look it up.
He either missed all of last year or got hurt like right out of the jump. I think he was hurt the year before. The coach speak has been positive. Or am I wrong?
He was out all last year.
He was out all of last year, and then the year before he actually had kind of a handful. He had an 8 for 98 game, which is wild to be able to do that. He's humongous, 6'7", 250. Definitely seemed like the most athletic of their giants. So
their monstars.
So yeah, I don't mind on a team where you have a little bit of ambiguity outside of Pittman, target-wise, to at least keep him on your radar.
That's going to do it for this show. If you want to get all of those rankings, you can get them in the Ultimate Draft Kit. Andy, lots of projections, lots of stuff that you've been in the lab working on. I mean, it's a labor of love from going from the draft to this point, and you're still tweaking. You're still working on stuff.
Yeah, we got the Draft Analyzer coming out here on July 1st, too, which lets people import teams and get a grade, and so we're going to keep making updates on that. I know you were working on that with our team the other day as well. So we're going to continue to improve. Just got a bunch of feedback from the Foot Clan, and we're just going to keep pumping up the Ultimate Draft Kit, making it better every week.
Yep, that's going to do it for us. Next week, Bets will be back. We'll be talking best ball champions and league winners. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. Don't forget to visit us on the web at thefantasyfootballers.com.